And unfortunately, Sally Hemings, if mentioned at all throughout history, is usually just mentioned as Thomas Jefferson's concubine. But what I think Sally Hemings should be known for is despite being born into slavery, she negotiated with one of the most powerful and most terrible men in American history to try to ensure freedom for her children.
Sometimes I think TikTok algorithm does this on purpose. It showed me this video about Jefferson, and I love Jefferson, and I got angry. So I responded onto it because I hate when people get stuff historically wrong or they distort the facts. And this video did distort the facts. And so I responded to it. I just comment on this girl's little video right here. And I kind of suspect she may have reported me for it, even though what I was saying was factually true. Or I was trying to point out the fact that she had certain facts wrong about Thomas Jefferson. She calls Thomas Jefferson the worst president in American history, and I think that's incorrect. It basically shames the guy that gave us our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence. It also distorts the reality of the time and the reality of who this president was. Do you know that he did free the kids, Hemings kids, in his will? Do you know that he tried to pass a law to basically teach African Americans so they could be freed in the South, but Congress denied the passage of that law? Congress did. He wanted it. Do you know that Sally Hemings made an agreement? You said this, I believe, that Sally Hemings made an agreement for her kids to be free if she came back to America with Thomas Jefferson from France. Do you know what that says? That she planned on having kids. Think about that. She planned on having, if what you're saying is true and Jefferson had an agreement where Sally Hemings would come back to America provided that her children were free, then she came back willingly to have kids with him. And as to the idea of her being a concubine, unfortunately that's factually correct. You can't say you want her to be revered as his second wife when she wasn't, and yet say that she was raped, and yet deny the fact she was a concubine. By insinuating that she's a concubine, you're validating the fact that she was raped. But to say that she wasn't a concubine, then she wasn't raped. You can't have it both. And I would agree with both views of history. She potentially might have been raped. But then she also, on some level, I think, agreed to something. At the same time, do not take this as being an indication that Jefferson was the worst person in history. He was flawed. But he thought that African Americans needed to be educated to get out of slavery. He did not think that they were inferior to whites because they were black. He thought they were inferior because they were slaves and uneducated, and that they needed to be educated to be lifted up to the same level as whites. There's a huge difference. And I'm angry for a very good reason, because I was lied about and accused of being a Trump supporter and accused of being a racist, while a white guy who sexually assaulted me, compliments of Shonda Rhimes, got to keep working. Do you understand that? And when I tried to get justice, I was denied justice because I was going against a black woman. When the reality is it was white men who were using that black race issue to deny me my rights for a guy. At first, I didn't get a lot of attacks about the video that I made. Very few. Mostly from the responses to the prior video, which I eventually blocked this woman. She didn't block me, I blocked her for her opinions on Jefferson.
So I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist, and one of the things that I'm recognized for is my ability to be able to have conversations surrounding race and bias with lots of understanding, empathy, and grace. But guess what? It is Labor Day. I'm off the clock, and you're talking about my ancestors, so let's get into it. This messaging is nothing new. This idea that house slaves that had to have, and I say had to have because it could not have been consensual, had to have a sexual relationship with their slave owner, are somehow lucky and that they are special in some way. It is disgusting, it is triggering, and it is repulsive. And it's wrong. And to say, oh, well, the children could have been field slaves and that would have been worse. He owned his children. He did not have to do that. John Adams didn't do that. Listen, Thomas Jefferson is your hero. I do not care. But don't act like he should be anybody else's hero, especially not a descendant of a slave. Are you kidding me? You must be outside your mind.
Okay, this other video about Jefferson popped up from a descendant of Jefferson, and I thought I was being nice. I was trying to be honest about how I felt because I thought she should be proud of both of her ancestors, Jefferson and Hemmings, not be shamed of one and oppressed by the other. Because half the time the African Americans who are studying Jefferson leave out important facts, or they're not told those facts because the white people in this country have been trying to erase the fact that Jefferson hated slavery because they want to embrace Jefferson as the president of the South, and he wasn't. He was not a Federalist. He wanted to let aliens come into this country. He wanted to give people citizenship from other places. He sided with French, not the British. He wanted to end slavery, and possibly because of his experience with Sally Hemings and her family. Someone had to start the process of ending slavery. And nothing in history is black and white. If it wasn't for slave owners like Jefferson, slavery would have not been hated. Because it took more, because people in the North were ignorant. I mean, they didn't have internet back then. They only heard what was being told. And unless they actually saw slavery and experienced themselves and saw it on a regular basis, they wouldn't have cared. That's the truth. I mean, think about it. Think about how the world works now. People have a tendency to care too much about things they shouldn't and care less about things that are being hidden away. Because we're doing the same thing we did back then, except for on a larger scale. History is being altered and manipulated by people with money and power. And the same thing is being done with Jefferson. You guys are playing into the hands of the white people who want you to hate Jefferson so you don't vote for the Democrats and white electors and you side up with them. But then also they're wanting to embrace Jefferson as one of theirs so they can claim the Constitution their own while simultaneously misinterpreting it and saying that this country is supposed to be for the Bible. It's not for the Bible. Jefferson rewrote his Bible. Jefferson wanted to free the slaves. Yes, he made stupid mistakes because he wasn't perfect. We all are not perfect. He was actually, I suspect, an INFP. He gave away his book collection to the Library of Congress rather than sell it to make money. He wasn't the kind of person who was very good with making money. So what? And if anything, he was an idealist. And it took an idealist to want to end slavery, not a money-grubbled capitalist who cared more about making money off the people in his care. Think about that.